What if I told you a simple mailbox could spark an all-out war? A petty neighbor, a battle of wills, and an unbreakable titanium fortress? This is the most absurd feud you've ever seen. Watch till the end, leave a comment, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more crazy stories. An enemy in disguise. If you had told me a year ago that I would find myself locked in an all-out war over a mailbox, I would have laughed in your face. A mailbox, one of the most mundane, forgettable objects in existence, became the battlefield for one of the pettiest, most ridiculous feuds I have ever encountered. And at the center of it all, Debbie Winston. Debbie was the self-proclaimed queen of our quiet suburban neighborhood. A middle-aged woman with a sharp bob, oversized sunglasses, and an ever-present clipboard, she acted as if the HOA had personally appointed her as the grand dictator of aesthetic standards. She had an opinion on everything: the color of your lawn chairs, the height of your hedges, even the number of pumpkins you put out on Halloween. From the moment I moved in, Debbie made it clear that she did not approve of me. The first time we met, I was unloading boxes from my truck when she approached with her arms crossed, scanning me up and down like a drill sergeant inspecting a sloppy recruit. "So, you're the new neighbor?" "Yep, name's John. Nice to meet you." "Mm-hmm. You know, we have a certain aesthetic standard in this neighborhood. We take pride in how things look around here." I wasn't sure what she was getting at until she tilted her chin toward my mailbox. Now, I'll be honest, my mailbox wasn't anything fancy. It was just a standard black metal postbox, a little weathered but still perfectly functional. I'd seen worse. Hell, I'd seen much worse on my drive in, but to Debbie it was apparently an affront to civilization itself. That thing sticks out like a sore thumb. It really ruins the uniformity of the street, don't you think? "Not really," I said flatly. "Well, maybe you'll consider getting something more fitting." With that, she flashed me a fake smile and strutted off, as if she had just done her good deed for the day. I should have known then and there. Debbie wasn't just a nuisance, she was a problem. The incidents begin. At first, it was just little things. One morning, I went out to grab my newspaper and noticed my mailbox was tilted slightly to one side. I chalked it up to bad weather or maybe some careless kid on a bike. A few days later, it happened again. Except this time, it was leaning even further. Then came the third time and the fourth. Each time I'd straighten it up only to find it mysteriously knocked over again the next morning. That's when I started to suspect something was up. So I did what any rational person would do. I secured it deeper into the ground and reinforced the base. Problem solved, right? Wrong. Because the next morning I stepped outside and found my mailbox completely ripped from the ground, lying on its side like a murder victim. At this point, I was pissed. Either I had the unluckiest mailbox in the world, or someone was actively trying to destroy it. So I took action. Setting the trap. I had no proof for a foul play yet, but if someone was screwing with me, I was going to catch them in the act. That evening, I installed a security camera facing the front yard, angled perfectly toward the crime scene. And let me tell you, I was not prepared for what I saw. The next morning, I reviewed the footage. The timestamp read 2:13 a.m. when a shadowy figure emerged from across the street, a flashlight bobbing in hand. And then I saw her, Debbie. Wearing a flowery nightgown and fuzzy slippers, she crept up to my mailbox like a cartoon villain. She glanced around, making sure no one was watching, completely unaware that I was capturing her every move. Then, like some kind of unhinged lunatic, she reeled back and kicked my mailbox with all her strength. She didn't just kick it once, she kicked it again and again, like she was trying to slay a dragon. At one point, she even grabbed the top of it and tried to rip it open with her bare hands. I sat there staring at the footage, my jaw hanging open. This wasn't just vandalism. This wasn't just a prank. This was a full-on personal war against my mailbox. And for what? Because she didn't like how it looked? I rewound the footage and watched it again, this time with morbid fascination. The sheer rage on her face, the determination in her movements. It was absurd. It was hilarious. And more than anything, it was war. I wasn't about to confront her right away. No, no. I wanted to see how far she'd go. So the next morning I reinstalled the mailbox, and I waited. The battle begins the next night. She came back. This time she didn't kick it. She shoved it with both hands as if expecting it to crumble at her touch. But I had secured it better than before. It wobbled, but it didn't fall. She huffed, stomped back across the street, and disappeared into the night. At this point, I knew it was going to become a routine. And if Debbie wanted to keep destroying my mailbox, then I was going to make damn sure she regretted it. The counterattack, I knew Debbie wouldn't stop. She wasn't the type to accept defeat, especially when it came to something as trivial and apparently infuriating as my mailbox. After watching her unhinged to 2 a.m. assault on my security footage, I decided it was time to make my move. If she wanted to keep fighting, I was going to make damn sure she lost. I spent the next day devising a plan. Confronting her directly would be useless. People like Debbie don't apologize, and they sure as hell don't admit when they're wrong. No, I needed to outsmart her. I needed to make it so that the next time she tried her little mailbox rampage, she'd regret it instantly. The ultimate mailbox I started researching. I looked into concrete bases, reinforced steel, even military-grade impact-resistant materials. For a brief moment, I considered installing an electric shock system, but then I remembered that I liked my freedom and didn't want to spend time in prison over a mailbox war. Then I found it. Titanium. Lightweight, durable, practically indestructible. The same material they use for spacecraft and fighter jets. It was complete overkill. But at this point, I didn't care. If Debbie wanted a battle, I was going to build a fortress. I made a few calls, found a metal worker who specialized in custom pieces, and placed my order. A titanium post, reinforced with an internal steel core. A high-impact resistant mailbox, capable of withstanding car crashes, hurricane-force winds, and, most importantly, psycho neighbors with rage issues. A deep concrete foundation, ensuring the structure would remain immovable. 2 days later, the parts arrived. That morning, as I supervised the installation, I felt a presence. I turned my head just in time to see Debbie staring at me from across the street. Her face was priceless. She stood frozen on her porch, mouth slightly open, trying to process what the hell I was doing. I could almost hear the wheels turning in her head. What is that idiot up to now? She must have realized that this wasn't just some casual mailbox replacement. This was a statement. I met her gaze, smiled, and waved. She turned and stormed back inside. The moment of truth, that night, I sat in my living room, sipping my coffee, my phone open to the live security feed. I didn't have to wait long. At exactly 2:04 a.m., Debbie reappeared. She was wearing the same damn flowery nightgown, carrying her trusty flashlight, and walking with the same determined, psychotic energy as always. She stopped in front of my new, unbreakable mailbox. I watched as she examined it, squinting in the darkness. She even nudged it lightly with her foot, as if testing its resolve. Then she did exactly what I was hoping for. She reeled back and delivered a full-force kick. The second her foot made contact, she instantly regretted it. Her body practically lifted off the ground as the impact reverberated through her leg. She stumbled backward, completely off balance, and landed flat on her ass in the middle of the sidewalk. Her flashlight rolled away. She let out a strangled yelp, clutching her foot with both hands, rocking back and forth in pain. I watched it all unfold in glorious high definition, sipping my coffee like it was the season finale of my favorite show. She sat there for a moment, muttering curses that would make a sailor blush before attempting to stand. But the second she put weight on her injured foot, she yelped again and started limping. That's when it hit her. She looked up at the mailbox, the untouched, immovable, glorious piece of craftsmanship, and realized she had lost. For the first time, she knew it. She hobbled away, gripping the side of a nearby fence for support before vanishing into the darkness. I sat back and smiled. But I underestimated Debbie. I thought this was the end of our ridiculous war. I was so wrong. The retaliation. The next morning, I stepped outside to grab my newspaper, feeling victorious. But the second I looked across the street, I nearly choked on my coffee. Debbie was sitting on her front porch, a bag of ice pressed against her foot, looking absolutely miserable. I should have felt bad. I should have walked over, asked if she was okay, maybe even extended an olive branch. But after months of her making my life hell, all I could feel was a deep, indescribable joy. She noticed me looking and immediately glared daggers at me, her face red with embarrassment. I smirked and gave her a polite wave. She ignored me completely. But the war wasn't over yet, because that afternoon while washing my truck, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A sleek black sedan pulled up in front of Debbie's house. I recognized the plates instantly. Lawyers. Oh, you have got to be kidding me. The lawsuit. The next day, I opened my mailbox, my unbreakable, glorious titanium mailbox, and found an official notice. Debbie was suing me. Her claim? That I had intentionally installed a dangerous structure designed to cause harm to others. I laughed so hard I had to sit down. This woman had spent months destroying my property, had willingly kicked over a steel post, and now she wanted to drag me to court over her own stupidity? Fine. If she wanted to play this game, then I was all in. The trial of the century. I had to hand it to Debbie. She was relentless. After all the nights she had spent sneaking into my yard, after all the kicks, punches, and full-blown tantrums she had thrown at my mailbox, she somehow found the audacity to drag me to court. And for what? Because she had willingly kicked a mailbox made of titanium and lost a battle against the laws of physics? It was beyond ridiculous. It was comedy gold. But if she thought I was going to roll over and let her play the victim, she had another thing coming. This was war, and I was about to deliver the knockout punch. The courtroom showdown the day of the hearing, I walked into the courthouse feeling cool as a cucumber. Debbie, on the other hand, she came in full soap opera mode. She had wrapped her foot in layers of bandages, was hobbling dramatically on crutches, and had an exaggerated grimace plastered on her face, as if she had barely survived some horrific accident. And if that wasn't enough, she had brought along a high-powered attorney, one of those guys who wears a three-piece suit with a pocket watch just to intimidate people. Meanwhile, I had brought no one, because I didn't need anyone. I had something way better than a lawyer. I had evidence. The judge, a no-nonsense older man with tired eyes, looked between the two of us and sighed. You could tell that he already regretted his life choices. Ms. Winston, your attorney may present your case, the judge announced. Debbie's lawyer shot to his feet, adjusting his expensive cufflinks as if he was about to present a murder trial. Your Honor, my client has suffered severe injuries due to the reckless and malicious actions of the defendant. He installed a mailbox with the clear intention of causing harm, creating a hidden hazard that resulted in my client's incapacitation. Not only was this an intentional act of violence, but my client also suffered physical and emotional trauma. I couldn't take it anymore. I actually laughed out loud. The judge raised an eyebrow. Debbie scowled at me. Something funny, Mr. Carter? The judge asked. Oh, I cleared my throat. I wasn't aware that standing up a mailbox counted as attempted murder. The judge pinched the bridge of his nose like he had a migraine. Let's hear your response, Mr. Carter. I stood up, reached into my pocket, and pulled out the golden ticket, a USB flash drive. Your Honor, I have security footage of Miss Winston attacking my mailbox, repeatedly, for months. This footage includes her. I turned to look directly at Debbie, grinning, kicking the mailbox with her own free will, several times, and injuring herself in the process. The entire courtroom went silent. Even her hotshot lawyer fumbled with his papers. The judge gestured to the bailiff. Play the footage. And so, in glorious high definition, the entire courtroom watched as Debbie, a grown woman in a floral bathrobe and fuzzy slippers, launched a full-force kick into my titanium mailbox, only to be sent flying backward like a cartoon character. At the moment of impact, her leg bent at an awkward angle, her face twisted in pain, and the slow-motion replay made it all the more beautiful. Somewhere in the back of the courtroom, I swear I heard someone snort. Debbie's lawyer frantically tried to recover. Your Honor, my client, she didn't know it was reinforced. The judge stared at him for a long, exasperated moment. Then he turned to Debbie. Ms. Winston, did you or did you not deliberately kick the mailbox? She stammered. I didn't know it was that hard. The judge removed his glasses and rubbed his face, completely done with this nonsense. Case dismissed. The aftermath. Debbie stormed out of the courtroom, limping even harder than before, probably because her real injury was to her ego. I followed her outside, basking in my victory, when I heard someone call my name. John! I turned and saw a group of my neighbors standing nearby. They had clearly come to witness the spectacle, and judging by their wide grins, they had enjoyed the show. We heard about the lawsuit and just had to see it for ourselves, one of them chuckled. She really thought she could win. Another laughed. I shrugged. Debbie doesn't know how to lose. At that exact moment, Debbie got into her car, slammed the door, and peeled out of the parking lot like a bat out of hell. But I should have known better. This wasn't over, because Debbie didn't just accept defeat, she plotted revenge. The final straw. Over the next few days, I started hearing rumors. Debbie was going door to door, trying to gather signatures for a petition to force me to remove my mailbox. Her reasoning? That mailbox is a danger to the community. What if a child runs into it? Do we really want a fortress in the middle of our neighborhood? There was just one tiny problem. There were no kids in our neighborhood. The only child in our entire street was an old Labrador named Max, and he spent 90% of his time sleeping in the sun. The best part? Her plan backfired spectacularly. Instead of turning the neighborhood against me, someone else took her petition, changed the wording, and turned it into a petition to kick her out. Within 3 days, the petition had far more signatures than necessary. The final blow. The HOA held an emergency meeting. The entire neighborhood gathered in the community center, all eyes on Debbie. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. The HOA president stood up. Ms. Winston, we have received multiple complaints about your behavior. As per our community guidelines, if a resident is deemed a recurring problem and the board votes against them, they must sell their home and leave. The vote was unanimous. Debbie was officially kicked out. She had 30 days to pack up and leave. The fall of a tyrant. The day the HOA officially voted Debbie out of the neighborhood, I felt something I hadn't felt since this ridiculous war began. Peace. It was over. Or at least, that's what I thought. But Debbie didn't go down without one final desperate attempt to burn everything to the ground. The aftermath of her defeat. For the first time in years, the neighborhood was united, and the unifying force? Getting rid of Debbie. Word had spread fast. People who barely spoke to each other before were now bonding over their shared hatred of the self-proclaimed neighborhood enforcer. By the time I got home from the meeting, my phone was blowing up with messages from neighbors. You hear? She's already trying to fight it. I saw her outside ranting on the phone to some lawyer. She put up a new sign in her window. Dude, go check it out. I stepped onto my porch and looked across the street. There, taped to Debbie's front window, was a massive handwritten sign in red ink. Unfairly evicted, victim of harassment, hoax community, neighbors are backstabbers. Oh, this was going to be beautiful. The final meltdown. Over the next few days, Debbie spiraled. She went full scorched earth mode. She started calling the HOA nonstop, demanding an appeal. She sent emails to every resident, ranting about how they had conspired against her. She even went to the local news station, trying to frame herself as the tragic victim of a neighborhood coup. No one bought it. Instead, the neighborhood did something truly beautiful. They celebrated. It started small. The Johnsons, 2 houses down, had a barbecue in their backyard and invited the entire block. Except Debbie. The Smiths next door put up festive string lights, and for the first time in years, the neighborhood actually felt alive. The best part? Someone, I still don't know who, decided to take Debbie's failed petition and throw a massive block party in my honor. The theme? Long live the mailbox. I walked outside one evening and found my neighbors hanging banners, setting up tables and blasting music. Someone had even made t-shirts with an image of my titanium mailbox on the front. I nearly cried. The final goodbye. Debbie had 30 days to leave. The first week, she refused to pack. She sat on her porch like a bitter queen on a crumbling throne, glaring at anyone who dared to glance her way. The second week, the for sale sign went up. By week 3, her rage had turned into quiet, burning resentment. And then, on the final day, it happened. I woke up early, walked outside, and there it was. A moving truck. For the first time in months, Debbie wasn't scowling. She wasn't screaming. She wasn't fighting. She was just gone. She loaded up the last of her things, slammed her car door, and pulled out of the driveway for the final time. And just like that, the reign of terror ended. I stood on my porch watching her car disappear down the street and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Freedom. Then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed. A message from one of my neighbors. It's over. We won. The neighborhood revolution with Debbie gone, the neighborhood thrived. People actually started talking to each other again. The HOA, now free from her iron grip, relaxed a bit. No more stupid fines for incorrectly trimmed hedges or overly festive Christmas decorations. Even the old dog Max seemed to be in a better mood. And me, I kept the mailbox. Not just because it was an unbreakable symbol of defiance, but because it had become a neighborhood landmark. People actually started taking photos with it. Someone even left a tiny plaque at its base that read, "In honor of the Great War." It was ridiculous. It was perfect. And it was mine. Epilogue. The legend lives on months past. Debbie faded into a distant bad memory, only mentioned during late-night porch conversations and neighborhood get-togethers. But one day I got an email from a friend who lived in another town. Attached was a link to a real estate listing. It was Debbie's new house. And in the listing photos, a mailbox. A cheap, flimsy, standard-issue mailbox. I laughed so hard I nearly fell out of my chair. Even in her new life, she would never have what I had. The indestructible mailbox, the unshakable victory, and a neighborhood that had finally found peace. Final lesson, a tale of pettiness and justice. So what did I learn from this absurd months-long war over a mailbox? Some people just don't know when to quit. If you stand your ground or your mailbox, justice will prevail. Sometimes the pettiest battles make for the greatest victories, and most importantly, titanium is always the answer.